Good morning. My name. I've lived in Suffolk County since 1982. My first place of residence was in Ronkonkoma, Long Island. I lived there for 12 years. I then moved to Hauppauge, Long Island, and I lived there for a period of 15 years. At that time, I then sold my home and I moved to Stony Brook, New York, and I am now living in Oakdale, New York. When I lived in Stony Brook, I lived in a condo which had electric heat. And unfortunately, with electric heat, you have very excessive heating bills. During that period of time, in one particular month, I received an electric bill over $500 for 1 month. The fuel surplus charge was increased. That month excessively. I, at that time, had an injury and was out of work. Real estate broker for 20 years. I was on disability, paying electric bill for 1 month. Very extreme difficulty. Since my neighbors were paying $700 because I was in an order act, I decided to start a petition, and I circulated it amongst my neighbors, and I wrote a letter at the time, and $800 a month. I forwarded a copy to every every state legislature, assemblymen, senators, the lieutenant governor, the controller, the public service commissioner, the nuclear commission, and assembly speaker, the majority speaker. I actually sent approximately 35 petitions to all the different political figures. I even sent one to Wayne Horsley, who is the committee chairperson for the Assembly of Suffolk County. I sent one to Tom Swazi, who is the county executive for Nassau, and I sent one to Steve Levy, who is the Suffolk County executive. I received responses from many people. One of them was from the Nassau County executive, Tom Swazi, and he wrote me a letter and sent to me that he had forwarded the petition to Richie Kessel. Upon Richie Kessel receiving this petition, he immediately sent letters to my entire complex and told them that the reason for the increase was due to the increase in the oil prices, and that the reason for my petition was uncalled for. Senator Kevin Laval received my petition and responded and told me he was forwarding it to Senator John J. Laval, who was in my district. Senator Laval made arrangements for me to meet with him at one of his town hall meetings. At his town hall meeting, which was at the J.P. Murphy School, I asked him what did he plan to do regarding the excessive increase. And he said to the members that came to the meeting, he said, "My first question is the most difficult question." He says, "I invited her to come to this meeting and she gives me the most difficult question." I wasn't aware of this, so therefore I was set to really have an argument with him regarding this, but in the course of all this, we became real good friends, and I provided them with all my documentations and so forth, and we made an alliance, and I met in his office, and we decided to hold a LIPA conference at my condominium complex, and Senator John Laval, Senator John Flanagan came, Assemblyman Stephen Englebright came, Assemblyman Mike Fitzpatrick came, Legislator Wayne Horsley came, and a spokesperson from Steve Levy's office also came. And I had newspaper coverage, and we had a very great meeting. It was videotaped, and I asked very, very intricate questions concerning how the LIPA contract was set up and how the takeover went and why we were paying money on bonds that didn't have any principal that was being paid off. Consequently, the meeting ended, and I had invited Richie Kessel to the meeting, but he refused to come. And he had told me that he wanted his own meeting. I made a meeting for him, and situation was he wasn't able to come. So consequently, Mike Fitzpatrick, the assemblyman, and I went to his office. When we went to his office, I asked him the same questions that were asked of the senator, assemblymen, and legislators. And we had a wonderful, wonderful meeting. He answered my questions, and although I had wanted a 10% discount for all senior citizens, he told me that he could not do that because then he would have to give it to all types of unions and so forth. But what he did agree to was to come to our complex and adjust our panels and to retrofit anything that would help in reducing the electricity that was being recorded. He would change our compressors at a minimal cost. He would change anything that had to be changed. It was a new program that was being introduced, and King Cullen was going through the process, and they were paying millions of dollars for this, and he was willing to do it for my community at no cost. And I thought that that was a wonderful, wonderful program that he was willing to do for us. And he was willing to bring in his top efficiency experts and engineers to come and take a look at our condos and to write down what the needs were, and then give a speech at our complex. And then he would leave and let them continue to do the work. And from that day forward, Richie Kessel and I have been friends, and we will continue to be friends because I thought he was speaking from the heart. He may deal with LIPA in a different way, but he was a man with a kind heart, and that's how I think of Richie Kessel. How he runs LIPA is differently, but very few men would I think, do that, and I was really impressed with him. So this is how I got involved with the electricity situation, and of course Richie Kessel has left LIPA, and now Kevin Law has taken over, and again we came upon a situation where the electric rates were increased extensively, and when that happened I called up LIPA and I asked Richie Kessel's secretary, Grace Bergen, to have a meeting with Kevin Law, and I told her I wanted to have a meeting with the legislators in Suffolk County, and she said, well, what date would you like, and I will set up a meeting with you. Since then, I had established a good rapport with many personnel people in LIPA, and they all knew me, so therefore I was able to do that. And Kevin Law accommodated me, And then at the last minute he says, well, I want to get to meet you first rather than having a meeting with everybody. So I had a one-on-one meeting with him, which went very well. And he said, what everyone says about you is true. I am pleased to meet you. Okay, let's set up the meeting. So we had a meeting, and we did have many people come. And as I am meeting with them and so forth, I am doing a lot of research on the operation of LIPA. Richie Castle, while I met with him, answered all the questions that I had. And since my questions were so intricate, I learned the inner makings, the inner operation of LIPA, how the company is run, and how they make certain decisions. And I found out that in their fuel surplus category, they build in charges other than fuel. And I asked that question of Kevin Law, and when I asked that question of him, he also indicated, yes, we do include other costs other than fuel. Consequently, when I heard this from Kevin Law, I was somewhat surprised because I thought he was going to be new management and was going to do things differently. But I saw that things were being run the same. And I researched many things. I took a look at their budget statements for every year, and I found many items that troubled me. And one of them was that LIPA has been sued for placing hazardous substances in many of our landfills. And they have paid hefty fines. And there are some that they have been sued on, and they have signed toll agreements. Toll agreements is simply, it is a form that they sign where they extend the length of term that they can be sued. And so henceforth, where I was initially started with the quest for lowering the electricity for senior citizens and for low-income people, I then went deeper into the landfill situation, and I discovered just how hazardous and serious the situation is with the landfills. Because of that, I am here today to inform the public that the landfills happen to be one of our most dangerous locations to the human public. Landfills cause diseases. When hazardous substances are placed into the landfills, they decay and they go into the deeper part of the soil, and gases are formed. When these gases are formed, some of them become plumes which go into the air, and we're not aware of. They do not post any signs that tell you that there are toxic substances in the landfills. So we being unaware of this, many of us go into these landfills unaware of this, and we get contaminated. And many of us come down with cancer, with tumors, and we don't know where we get these. The Northeast Coast has the largest. Why? Well, we should look to the landfills as one of the reasons why. And it is some of the businesses that contribute to this. I'm sorry, but I don't know all of them by heart, but I'm going to have to read this to you. The synthetic fibers and pesticides productions, chemical industries, waste oil recoveries, fertilizers, production of batteries and accumulators, synthetic wood industries, refineries, oil companies, production of other oil products, cement and magnesium, metal surface treatment, recycling, PB accumulators, tanners, dyeing industry, metal plating and dyeing units, shipyards, textile dyeing and finishing companies, painting and coating manufacturing, paints and coating manufacturing, production and treatment of metals, manufacturing of plastic products, production of medicines, agromedicals, organic and inorganic chemicals, electricity power plants, and others. Since we have such major corporations that produce all these hazardous substances, they have multi-million dollars. Them paying fines is like pennies to us. They pay these fines and they think nothing of it. They incorporate the cost of these fines into the products. So they continue contaminating. It is of no consequence to them at all. In 1980, during the Reagan administration, there was a bill that was passed as a result of a catastrophe that happened. Some of you may not be aware of it. It was the Love Canal catastrophe. And Congress passed what they call the Superfund Legislation Act. It was a bill that that was supposed to make arrangements for the government to put aside money for the cleanup of hazardous substance that were released by companies, individual corporations, and what they did was impose a tax. I believe they used the gasoline and the transportation as a tax to accumulate. I think they accumulated $9 billion. And then they amended it in 1986 because during that period of time it wasn't very effective. The individual who was in charge did not do her duties, and in 1986 they amended it, and finally it got where it was actually being affected. They established certain divisions, and the EPA was involved, Circular and other organizations, and they had certain provisions set up. And what it does do is that when an individual is found to contaminate a particular location, the government pays for the remediation, which means the cleanup of that area. Then the Attorney General sues that company, and they are sued at only 70% of the remediation costs. And it can take up to 10 to 15 years to get that money, which means that in the interim, the government is out that money. And that is if they are able to find the person or the company or the individual who released that hazardous substance. It is my belief that this legislation is outdated and that we should have a different type of legislation that is much firmer and that has provisions that are much more strict and that would make it so that these firms would not want to pollute. I have checked with the Attorney General's office, and I had an idea that if perhaps we had a provision that would provide for incarceration of these individuals who pollute our waterways, which kill our marine life, and these people who are going into the landfills not knowing what is going on there, that perhaps this might deter these corporations and individuals from doing that. So therefore, I have written a legislation, and I have submitted it to Congressman Peter King, to Senator Charles Schumer, Assemblywoman Ginny Fields, Assemblyman Philip Boyle, and Assemblyman Mike Fitzpatrick. I faxed it to them yesterday, and I delivered it to Senator Cesar Trenzo. My bill it's called the New York State Environmental Liability Act. This bill will protect the people against individuals who contaminate any part of our precious earth with hazardous substance that may endanger human health or marine life. The provisions are: the New York State Comptroller will establish a fund. All penalties collected from individuals, companies, corporations who were found guilty of placing hazardous substance on landfills or bodies of water, money must be paid by bank check or certified check. The money in this fund will only be used in the event an individual, company, corporation, or individual who place the hazardous substances in a location cannot be located. C. Persons are liable for their release of the hazardous substance. D. Hazardous substances must be cleaned up within 6 months, or an additional fine of $50,000 will be imposed. If you receive a second violation while you are still in process of cleaning up another violation, you will have 6 months to remedy both. If this is not done, you will go to jail. If you receive 3 violations in a period of 2 years, you are considered a repeat offender and you go to jail. Any government employee who deliberately falsifies documents to cover up existence of hazardous substance or information concerning the party responsible will be prosecuted as an accomplice and will serve time. The violation fees are: first, $50,000 goes into the fund. Second, $100,000. Third is $200,000 goes into the fund. With the third violation, there is mandatory jail time of 3 years. An officer or owner must be held accountable for release of the hazardous substance, no exception. The purpose of this legislation is to have such penalties that no individual or corporation will want to release hazardous substance on land or waterways, knowing that there is a possibility that they may be incarcerated. Currently, the Superfund Legislation Act only provides for remediation costs. If they know who they are, this process takes up to 10 years. In the interim, the government pays for the cost to remediate the site. They don't receive any money for possibly 10 years since the process is so long. This legislation may need to be further amended. I will contact senators and congressmen to discuss this. Landfills are in some instances, or in most instances, located in residential locations where the residents are not aware if hazardous substances are placed in there. Signs are not posted, so therefore sometimes individuals go and place empty bottles, whatever, in there, and they are not aware that they are at risk. These substances decay and go deep into the landfill on vacant land, resulting in contamination of the ground drinking water and give off toxic gases. When you get heavily contaminated toxic site, the site has to be abandoned, and the workers have to wear hazmat suits to check the status of the cleanup site. This means that if anyone has ever become close or near that site, they have been exposed to numerous diseases. Toxic fumes created from toxic plumes from landfills contaminated rocks and heavy metals such as mercury, lead, cadmium, anadromine, etc., have damaged the immune system of human beings, animals, birds, and marine life. Yet landfills remain uncapped and open. A 9-year-old boy was stricken with spinal cancer in 1974, brain cancer in 1977. Today he is in a hospice facility. His mother suffered 4 miscarriages. This is the son and wife of a PhD doctor friend of mine. They entered the Huntington landfill amongst thousands of others. Not one toxic sign was posted anywhere. The drinking supply water was contaminated in the Blydenburg town of Islip landfill. 55-gallon drums were placed in the landfill by a carting company who was hired by a dry cleaning firm. The carting company is now being sued by the Attorney General for $10 million. These drums contaminated the drinking water of the wells and all the water in that location. Bottled water had to be given to the residents in the nearby neighborhood for several years until a new main supply could be brought in and the people were able to have good drinking water. The Whippoorwillow Kindergarten School had to be closed because of the contaminated water and the toxic gases that were in the air. Since I was a resident in this neighborhood, I know there were no signs in the landfill and there were no notices sent out. Many residents were gravely ill from this particular landfill. Among them is my sister, who was just diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor. I too have a tumor. I have to go for yearly monitoring of my brain. I lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. The Blydenburg landfill is a Superfund site, and it's on the national priorities list. Lawrence Aviation built airplane parts until it went out of business. When it went out of business, it left the property with contaminated drums all over the property. It received numerous summonses and violations, and it never cleared up the site. Eventually, Mr. Cohen, the owner, was brought to trial. Just a month or so ago, he was found guilty and he was sent to jail, and he was fined multi-million dollars, which will be used to clean up the property, because it is, in its current use, it is unusable. The property is totally destroyed. And this just happened just the other day, just a month or so ago. We cannot allow individuals, corporations, companies to destroy and kill human beings. It is reprehensible. The money that they pay for the fines do not replace the lives that are lost, the individuals that are permanently disabled. We must find a solution to stopping them to pollute. The legislation that I have proposed is a proposal. I have contacted a few of them. I spoke to Assemblyman Philip Boyle. I spoke with Ginny Field's office today. I told them that this is an urgent legislation. This is not a matter of something to be put off for years to come. We need resolution immediately. We do not have a fishing industry because our waters are so contaminated that the fish have all died off. Just as the fish have died off, so has the human life been affected. And we do not want a situation where our generations do not have parks, do not have a future. We need to do this for our children, our grandchildren, and the future generations. It is therefore the utmost importance that we do something about this immediately. We must protect the safety of this earth for our children, grandchildren, otherwise there will not be a future for anyone. In honor of all the individuals who have fallen ill and who have died as a result of contamination to our environment, and for all the above stated reasons, I dedicated this bill for them. I've done a tremendous amount of research and study in this field. I know that New York City has a different way in which they deal with their garbage. They collect their garbage and they bring it to Staten Island and they compact it, and they then ship it to other states in the Midwest. I have discovered I should say the state of Indiana has just implemented a machine which is called a plasma arc furnace, which is the state-of-the-art way of getting rid of garbage. What it is they've just implemented in 2007 and 2008. It burns the garbage at such a high temperature. I believe it's between 400 and 500 degrees. I'm not certain of that, but I will double check it. I just took the information. I'm going to call the state of Indiana and all the officials that are involved with this, and it will also burn the hazardous substances, and to such a rate that it causes no harm. And what this plasma arc furnace, I know the company who builds it. I just got that information yesterday, otherwise I would have had the material and I would have given it to you. And it then takes the heat and transfer it into electricity. And it is a wonderful, wonderful thing, because not only does it get rid of the garbage, but then we can have the benefit of getting electricity from it. So I hope that if we get an opportunity, maybe the next time I can give you good news and tell you about the benefits of this, and we can share in it, and we can turn our landfills into, there are ways of turning the landfills into ways of having the garbage turned into electricity, but it does take time to do that, so hopefully we can do that. And my message is, please do not go into landfills. Stay away from them, even though you don't see any sign. There are hazards in there, and be safe and have a wonderful day, and always do a good deed for everyone else. Have a wonderful day. Bye.